So I'm here to talk about navigating the future of your creative life, because creativity is not just design or writing. I am an expert on the future because I like to think about it every night at 3 in the morning. It's usually a non-consensual situation. I just wake up and it's like, what's gonna happen? And it's really been a problem for me my entire life, that I struggle with anxiety about things that I don't know about or what's gonna happen, and I freak out, and it's really been a constant process of coming back and enjoying the present moment, because what I'm at risk of when I have anxiety about my future is wasting my life, my creative life. Because if we can't enjoy today, how are we going to enjoy the future? Because there's always that other level to get to. I'm a multi-creative. I started with Mario Paint. Has anyone heard of Mario Paint? Yes, thank you, thank you. This was 80-something, back in the last century. And you could compose music. Each of the characters was a different sound. You could draw and make animations and put your music to them while looking at the wood paneling in your guest bedroom on your old-timey TV, which had 3 dimensions. And we would tape these, just complete latchkey kids in Florida getting in trouble, snorting pixie sticks and playing Mario Paint all day. And we would tape them for our parents, and I remember how pleasing it was. I made a woman getting abducted by an alien, and I made the beam of the alien ship go like this, and the higher she went, the more it went like this. And I was like, super neurotic, this is what I want to do with the rest of my life. And I was gonna get the top of the line equipment in my creative life. I was gonna get all the 3.5 floppy disks I wanted. As a photographer, I was gonna have my own darkroom, and I was going to be faxing in stories from all over the world to the very intact magazine industry with their huge current budgets, and I could not wait. Little did I know there would be something called the internet. First, it was real squealy, and if you picked up the phone while someone was on it, you lost your hearing a little bit. I didn't know there would be phones you didn't have to fight your sister over, that didn't have cords that would get tangled. And I didn't know we would be able to write from anywhere in the world, and all these amazing tools would come our way, that there would be something called Adobe Stock. I also didn't know there would be a recession, that I would lose my first house in a short sale, that there would be, a plague during my lifetime. So no matter what I had planned, there was a different map that I was going to encounter in the future, for the better and for worse. And that's why we really can't say, this is what's going to happen in the future of my creative life. We can have our vision, but it's never going to be exactly what we think it's going to be. Jane McGonigal, a futurist, says, when we project ourselves into the future, too often we imagine lives and circumstances that are really similar to today. We have to break through that mindset. Case in point, Back to the Future. This was their imagination of the future in 1985. We have your Jaws 19. And my favorite part was that they thought the biggest and most amazing thing that was going to happen with cars over the next 25 years was going to be some really weird hubcaps on a 1985 Mustang convertible. So I love always our visions of the future from that time, because you can totally see how we are blinded by the time that we're in. So I want you to think back for a second. We're going to do a little exercise. You'll have just a few seconds to jot things down or do a little drawing if you'd like. But think back to your little baby self, the time when you decided to follow this path. And you're like, I'm not going to be a doctor. I want to draw. I want to make money. How are you different? What did you plan for your life? And what's been a surprise? I was surprised by the recession while I was in small town newspapers, and so I decided to join Peace Corps. Not to be a good person, that's just what I tell people, but I wanted to travel and I wanted to do something big, and I had never been outside the country except for like on little like can cruise trips. Cancun trips. And so I went to Peace Corps. I got sent to Paraguay, which I never thought I would know where that was on a map. And when I got there, I knew that there was something more that I wanted. I had majored in journalism, and it was like going to the, education board meetings, and you got like a fun little sentence in there, that's a little creative, that's fun, right? But I was like, people need information, that's pretty steady, and if I have a nice verb, that's great. And when I was there, I read Dave Eggers' A Heartbreaking Work of Staggering Genius. Has anyone read that book? It's about as good as it gets. And I was like, this is the kind of thing I want to write. But I didn't do anything with that yet. I just kind of sat on that knowledge of like, not quite in the right place. Until one day I was on a bus in the capital, which was about 4 hours from where I lived. And when you went in the city, the buses were wild. They were dirtier than the stock photo, or usual stock photos. And people would get on the bus. Usually it was men who went to some kind of infomercial school. They would get on the bus and be like, ladies and gentlemen, excuse the interruption, I have for you today the most wonderful nail clippers you're definitely gonna wanna buy. It was just always entertaining. And one day, a young woman got on the bus, and she was probably about 20, and she stood really quietly at the front, and she just said, I have something for you, and if you'd like it, you can have it for about a quarter, and if not, I'll just take it back. And she handed out this really nice blue speckled stock paper, a kind I hadn't seen in country, and on it was a poem, and it was her poem. And this young woman was just making her work and getting it out in the world. And I was worried, what if I try to become a creative writer and I never win the Pulitzer? It'll be so embarrassing. And this chick was just kicking my butt, living her creative life. And I heard a voice in my head that said, you wuss, just be a writer already. And so I began. I would sit in my hammock and I read Bird by Bird, and I would drink 10 a day, and I would just start to write stuff on a page. I didn't know. And now, 15 years later, I'm mid-career, I'm feeling good, been in all these publications, I have a book, I have a software for writers, I'm running groups for writers, steady, having less, panic attacks. Gotten to be with some amazing illustrators in the Washington Post and New York Times, which is always such a delight. So working with creatives who are on this new level, which has been so fun. And I'm just cruising, right? Feeling good, feeling hot. And then I hear about something called ChatGPT. And went through all the phases. Needed a minute, needed a hot minute. I was really, really down. I had to go hold my friend's baby and cry, probably giving him some kind of deep, weird memory. And I was really having a complete panic over what was gonna happen. Again, the future felt so dark. But I've done some improv, and they say in improv, yes, and. You always have to say yes, and. You can't be like, nope, that's not what's happening. Yes, this is happening. The world, again, is changing. And so I really started to rethink, no matter what is in my control and what do I want my creative life to look like? I thought about something I learned about called your locus of control, and that is what is in the circle of what you can control. And that is really where our attention is best spent, right? I can worry all day about what's gonna happen in the future, what technology companies are doing, but what can I do to really think about my life and what's in my control? And I said, you know what I know I want in my creative life is adventure. I wanna have big adventures, I wanna write about them, I wanna take photos of them, I wanna do big things. And so I'm just gonna focus on that and trying to have those really in-person human experiences. And there was a kind of experience that I'd seen people have or seen evidence of that I did not understand. I didn't know what was going on with this, and I was like, I want to do that. And it looks like this. I'd be going to the mall, and I was looking at this truck, and I'm like, what is that thing? Where are these people going on the weekend? These people are living cooler lives than me. I demand to know who they are and how I can get in. So I finagled. And this is one really important lesson. No one said, hey, do you want to go on this? I had to call this guy, email this guy, hey, I'm a writer, I'd love to go on your trip. It's the Baja XL. It's a 10-day off-roading rally from San Diego down to Cabo San Lucas and back. In my case, with strangers, not knowing who I was riding with each day, just being some weirdo with a backpack from REI that I anxiety bought at the last minute. And I sent myself on this trip as a writer. And this is the last day. You can dress me up, you can dress me down. And I am so happy in this picture. I had done it day by day, finding a ride, finding food, getting lost, all kinds of crazy stuff happening. And I was so happy and came back to my regular life just feeling more confident and happier about my future. And I realized it was because I learned so much from the people who were on this trip and lived this kind of off-roading life and do these adventures. And off-roading reminds me of the creative life. There really is no set path. You're wondering if you're on the right road. You wonder when the last time you showered was. And so I said, for this talk, I think I have 10 lessons that I could share from off-roading about the future of your creative life. So that's what I'd love to share with you today. Number 1, check the weather and pack your gear. I didn't know about gear growing up. I grew up in Florida. Gear is only for things that are difficult. And we are doing something difficult. And we can't just go out and be like, in Florida, there's no kind of situation between opening the front door and leaving. I only learned that once I went to Seattle and started doing big things in Seattle. I'm like, oh, there's a whole process. You can't just go in and out the front door, right? It's cold out there, it's rainy. And so when I was going down here, I'm thinking, it's Mexico, I'm cool. But because I checked the weather and I checked the Facebook group I was in with everyone else, someone said, oh my God, it is so cold. And these are former Marines, these are tough guys. And this guy was like, it's so cold. So at the last minute, I bought myself a new Facebook Marketplace sleeping bag rated for 20 degrees. And that night, it was so nice to be taken care of and just warm enough. And I'm so glad I checked the weather. So what is checking the weather in our creative lives? It's coming to conferences just like this, meeting and following people who are ahead of the path, on the creative path, and seeing what their thought leadership tells you about what's going to happen. It's signing up for publications that talk about the kinds of career you want to have. And you're looking for signals of change. Signals of change are the media of futurists. And these are a clue that things might soon become different, and different how. And that definition is from Jane McGonigal. So when I see a freelancer ad for a writer that says AI-assisted copywriter, well, that's new, right? That's a signal of change. When you see that little, generate box on the bottom of Photoshop beta, you're like, that's new. Put in a monkey. Oh, okay, that signals a change. And so what this does when you start to collect these signals of change, and you can even start to keep a log of what am I seeing where the industry's changing? How am I seeing my career change? What are the signals that things are changing? What you do is arrange them in scenarios. And you can set up different possibilities for the future and just be more prepared for that future. When I was 28 coming back from Peace Corps, I was a little bit like this tire in my life. I was stuck. 2 days after coming home from Peace Corps, I had to move into my mom's house, and I was working in a cubicle the size of a bathroom stall doing data entry. And I discovered something called not staying here energy. And I just said, this sucks. I don't like it. I'm listening to a lot of Florence and the Machine, Lungs. And I'm like, I'm not staying here. This really, really sucks. I don't like where I am. And I said, I'm just going to improve a little bit each day and get out of here and improve my gear. Because for us creatives, gear is, yes, it's your fun iPad and it's your iPhone and it's your all your fun stuff, but our major gear is inside of our minds. It's our skills. So I'm putting in a lot of data entry. I'm like, I'm gonna be like those cool chicks at the bank who can just do this. I'm gonna learn that little 10-key numerical pad. And I studied for 15 minutes, and then I did my sad, terrible job for the rest of the time. And I started this habit of upgrading my mental gear for 15 minutes a day. And since then, these are all the classes I've finished on LinkedIn Learning, which used to be Linda. I ended up making a manual for what we were doing, getting hired on to be an executive assistant at that job. There used to be this woman who would come down and yell at us, temps, and I got to hear her get taken into the CEO's office and yelled at for her bad attitude. It was really fun. And I ended up in this way when I moved to Seattle and I got a job at a tech company writing RFP responses. It was incredibly boring. And so I said, I need something to make this more interesting. And that's where I discovered InDesign. I ended up getting my Adobe Expert Certificate in InDesign from LinkedIn Learning. And if you take 15 minutes a day to upgrade your gear, you'll have 40 more hours of training a year than someone who doesn't have this habit. And that is a major difference over the life of your career. And now I feel a bit more like this Jeep when it comes to my career. I have big mountains to climb, and I have the tires, and I have the lights, and I have everything I need to get where I want to go, and I'm just gonna keep getting better and better. That is a habit that really starts to become a flywheel where the better you are, the more money you can earn, the more you can hire out the things you're bad at, and oh Lord, am I bad at a lot of things that goes into owning a business, and then you can dig deeper into your skills, and it's really something that's paid off in my life. Number 2, do the best you can with what you've got. So some people had these fancy rigs, they were very fun to drive, and some people went in a VW Bug. Some people had a lot of money to invest in the rally. Some people had mechanical knowledge where they could fix their own rigs and do this in a Mazda Miata, which was kind of amazing. And sometimes you can get a new bumper, sometimes you got zip ties. And there's nothing that's taught me more about doing the best you can with what you got than joining Peace Corps and living in a place where people probably had 20% of the resources we have in general. And I was working for a cooperative that made clothes and an embroidery called Alcoy, and they wanted me to help them make a catalog. But our photos are really coming out crappy. So I was like, we need light boxes. And the thing you do usually is like, we need light boxes. We have no money, no light boxes, right? But I was like, all right, we're gonna finagle some light boxes. I grew up in the era of MacGyver, so I took these cardboard boxes, I lined the inside, thank you, sir. I lined the inside with white paper, all the while they're looking at me like, what is this chick doing? And I covered them with the same fabric they used for the clothes. We put them up on the clothing racks, put lights in them, and they totally improved our photos. And it was such a great lesson because so often we're paralyzed because we cannot afford the brand new laptop that we want, right? And so all you can do is do the best you can with what you've got. And it actually can be an incredible lesson in creativity. We see this a lot in nature. A turtle is very slow, but it's got armor. A cheetah has soft skin, it's very fast. Some lizards have incredible camouflage. Some are like, yeah, you can see me, but I'm poisonous, so you wanna go for it? I'm all red, right? Let me know. So what is your strategy? What are your strengths? What is the best you can do with what you have? I have ADHD, which means I love to talk, which means I love to create, which means I'm really bad at paying bills, which means I'm really bad at checking all the boxes, doing the things. So my strategy is I want to get so good at what I do that I can afford people around me who can help me with the other stuff. And I now have 3 just contractors working for me, and it's so nice to be in that area. And when I'm using the 10 key now, it's to calculate our revenue and feel like a boss bee, which I very much enjoy. Number 3, expect flat tires. We are not on the main highway of the finance job. We are off-roading. And so many flat tires happened on this trip that this guy actually, in this moment, he was here and someone came by and said, oh, hey, you got a flat tire. And he's like, oh, you do too. They both had flat tires. That's how often it happened. But no one was that surprised when they got a flat tire. They expected to be spending time in these, they call them talleres in Spanish, because they knew this was going to be part of the deal. And these are some of my flat tires. These are my rejection letters. I put them on Instagram so other writers can see what it looks like. And I have to expect them. You want to be an actress out in LA, you have to expect to be going on a lot of auditions and not getting a lot of parts, right? This is my sales for my business. I like to get a flat tire usually around August and then another one around December. And these are my submissions. This is from my software I made for writers. And the blue is my submissions. The red are my rejections. And if you can look closely, you can see the tiny little yellow. Those are my acceptances. It's a lot of flat tires. And this is the fun we've chosen. And you're like, that doesn't sound that fun. I agree. But what we have is the difference between type 1 fun and type 2 fun. Someone made a fun scale. So there's someone out there nerdier than I am, but very thankful. Type 1 fun is getting DoorDash, drinking beer, and watching TV with your friends on a Friday night, right? It's fun. It's always fun in the moment. Type 2 fun isn't necessarily fun in the moment, but it's fun when it's really fun and when you think back on it. And with type 2 fun, things like hikes, things like big projects, things like a creative career, you get that sense of confidence and that sense of self-satisfaction once it's done. It's not there in the moment. It's not a microwave, it's a crock pot. Number 4, prepare for the worst case scenario. This is not one of my photos, but I'm a very big fan of lava. So this guy on the left is Andrew. He is the organizer of the Baja XL. And when his life insurance company scrolled through his Instagram, they jacked up his premium by 20%. He's always doing wild things. His company is called the Institute for Unsafe Living. That's who you make your check out to if you go on the Baja Rally. And even though he will tell you, I'm not gonna come save you if you get a flat tire, you're screwed if you get lost, you might get robbed, even he brings along a medic for that worst case scenario. That is covered. And there's a really important lesson here that comes from a man named Admiral James Stockdale. And he was the highest ranking officer in the POW camp referred to as the Hanoi Hilton. And he was there for 8 years. He created a language of tapping for the troops to speak. And not only was he dealing with his own personal, torture and distress and depression, and I can't even imagine that experience, but he had the burden of being the highest ranking officer and being responsible for the other troops. And when the author, Jim Collins, interviewed him, he said, how did you make it through that? And he said, I had unwavering faith that I was gonna make it in the end. And Jim Collins asked him, who didn't make it? Who didn't make it out? And he said, oh, that's easy, the optimists. And he was like, well, wait, what's the difference? You just said you never lost faith. And he said, I also never shied away from the brutal facts of our reality. The optimists would say, oh, we're gonna get out by Christmas. And then Christmas would come and they wouldn't get out. Oh, we'll be out by 4th of July. 4th of July would come and they wouldn't get out. And you can imagine 8 years passing like this. And he said they so often died of broken hearts. And so the Stockdale paradox is that you must maintain unwavering faith that you will prevail regardless of the difficulties, and at the same time have the discipline to confront the most brutal facts of your current reality. So, it's funny, I've been learning a lot about AI, and I offered a class on AI for writers, and almost no one signed up. And I was like, I know y'all are talking about it. I know I have an audience that likes to sign up for classes. I think we have an ostrich situation going on right now. Nobody wanted to talk about it. But we have to confront the things that frighten us. So every year, on December 21st, my team and I get together. This is the darkest day of the year. And we deal with the Stockdale paradox. We say, what happens if our website gets hacked? What happens if one of us wins the lottery and moves to Tahiti? What do we do? And this sounds like a terrible way to go into the Christmas holiday. But what I've found is that it actually really gives me a sense of control and of calm that we've handled those things. Because I think when you're not actually dealing with the reality, you know you're BSing yourself. You know you're living kind of up here, not really looking at what might be going on down there. You're not based in reality. And I've been out to the lava fields. Anyone been to the big island of Hawaii and seen the lava fields? It's this incredible site where, here came this lava and devastated everything over here, and it looks like the surface of Mars. But then over here, there was a lava flow 2 years ago, and you start to see some sprouts and things come up. And then, over here, that was 30 years ago, and there's fully a forest. And you're like, I can't believe there was ever devastation here. And in 2020, we all experienced devastation. And from that can really come beauty. I, like everyone, got my shopping cart and filled it with Haagen-Dazs and rosé. Didn't do any exercise classes, and after a few months, I was like, you know what, I really should do something. I know it would feel better to exercise. And it had been 10 years since I got back from Paraguay, and I hadn't done anything to keep up my Spanish, and it was hitting my anniversary, so I'm like, you suck, you're not working out. You suck, you don't speak Spanish. And I was like, okay, we're gonna accept where we are. What's something we can do about this? And I said, well, if I got a personal trainer, it would be online anyway. Why don't I just hire someone who lives in Colombia? And so I hired my buddy Hammy, and he and I worked out in my hotel this morning. He's now my best friend. This was his baby when we started, and his baby is now old enough to be walking by and going, vamos, vamos, Pauli, vamos. And this has been such a joy in my life. My Spanish is so much more natural because I'm practicing 5 days a week, and I get that workout in. And having ADHD, I just need someone watching me to be like, you taking care of yourself? You working out? You doing good? Right? I have to have that, what they call body doubling, and that really helps me. And then I also started writing online. I started a group called A Very Important Meeting because everyone was a little stressed. Nobody was writing, and everyone's attention was all over the place. So I said, let's get together. I'll lead a 10-minute meditation. I had never led meditations before. As an anxious person, I'd listened to a million trying to fall asleep. So I just jumped in and I improvised. And I just said what I'd heard a bunch of times and led meditations. And it was such an interesting experience to give that to other people, to help other people calm. And then we wrote together for 45 minutes, and then we shared at the end. And it was so amazing. Actually, the last conference I went to, someone came up to me. He was one of the faculty, and I hadn't talked to him at all, and he just comes up to me like this, and he goes, I need a meditation so bad. I'm so frazzled. I hear you have that skill. Will you do one for me? I was like, oh my God, like an urgent meditation? I've never heard of this. And so we just found a quiet corner, and I'm just like, this is really funny. He was like, close your eyes. I was like, I feel like I have a superpower. And that also is going on to this day. So from the challenges that you have with your creativity, you can create something beautiful out of that. Number 5, be willing to get dirty. This is Patrick's hands, who was riding a motorcycle during this trip. And this was even inside the vehicle, what it looked like by midday after we cleaned our GPS off in the morning. Everything was so dusty, everything was so dirty. I had to go 4 days without a shower at one point. It was kind of gross. And James Clear said, being a pro is painful, right? On Labor Day, I had to work all weekend because I'd gotten COVID, and guess what? When you own your business and you have a deadline, I had to work all weekend. It was painful. On Labor Day, I worked until dinner time. I had dinner with my friends. I came back and I worked from 8 to 10. It was not fun. The year that I wrote my book, I got paid $9,000 for my book. It took a lot of time. Once you take out my agent and taxes, it's not a lot of money. My neighborhood had gotten so much more expensive in Seattle. In order to stay in my community, which was really important to me at the time, and write this book, I had to work from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. every night, and I lived in this 150 square foot apartment with this gorgeous view. I don't know if you've seen corrugated steel. It's lovely in the nighttime. And I said, this is what I'm willing to do to make it happen right now. And that's been an incredible base for the rest of building my brand and building my career. And at that time, I had this client named Nir Eyal. He wrote Hooked and Indistractable, and he was having an amazing conference in San Francisco. And I bartered in order to do photography for the conference. And I had to buy my flight, and then where was I gonna stay? This is San Francisco, right? It was gonna be crazy expensive. And usually you'd be like, all right, I can't afford it. Like, I can't. And I did the thing I didn't wanna do. I stayed on bunk 2 in a hostel and was in a dorm with 3 other people. And I was like, no one would believe that I stayed here, right? This is me dressed for the conference. And I made it happen. And at that conference, I got Fender as a client. I did what I had to do to make it happen. And on the end of all this, on the other side of all this like grit and hard work and sweat, there are beautiful experiences. Like, I didn't know there's a place where these whales come up to you in the wild to be pet. Like, coming from Florida, we don't shampoo anymore. We know that's wrong, right? But this was in the wild, these whales come up. And I was, got my ratty, dirty hair. But I was having this life-changing experience. And on the other side of this is being invited to a conference and being able to speak and having my hotel room paid for all by myself. So moving up, doing whatever you have to do in order to move up to get where you want to be. Number 6, rise up together. So this was Dave. And Dave came with an incredible spirit of giving. He was there 3 times before, and he's been a mechanic for 30 years. He is legendary for battery welding an axle in the field and the limo that they did this rally in a few years ago. Oh, still good. He was helping anyone who was in over their head, as this person was on their motorcycle. And he brought stickers and toys for the kids. He even helped this woman that we were passing, and she had been collecting cactus wood all day in order to sell, and her hands were all cut up. And he's like, you guys go ahead, I'm gonna help her out. It was just a really beautiful thing to see. And yes, there are a lot of flat tires out in the wild, right? We've all struggled out here. The wonderful thing about the Baja was that when one person got a flat tire, in general, it looked like this. We all stopped. Everyone made sure that person was okay. Everyone looked around and said, hey, I got this patch, or I have this whatever fancy thing fills the tire up, I don't know, I'm just there to watch. And it was a really beautiful thing. And in that way, when I started to do a very important meeting and we were writing together online, I used to think I had to be the one beautiful flower in the vase, the one best writer. I had to win at writing, right? And seeing everyone write together and talking and creating this community really helped me see myself more as, one flower in a field of wildflowers that were all blooming, and it was a much more beautiful thing, and I was able to enjoy other people's success and feel more supported in my own struggles. So we're gonna do a very quick thing at the end of this, and I want you to find 3 road pals today. 3 people you've never met before, and say, will you be my road pal? Exchange cards. I want you to have a 15-minute meeting, maybe sometime here, maybe sometime this month. Say what you need in your business right now and what you have to give. And then message me whenever something amazing happens. Because this is the most important thing, to be going through this together and to really support each other. It's such an incredible part of being a creative, is the community you're around, is the minds in this room. Number 7, celebrate along the way. And I learned this from my very fancy client, Kirsten Jordan. She was the first female cast member of $1 Million Listing New York. And I was in New York staying with her, and we were doing her book proposal. And it took all week. And this was the last point in her book, was to celebrate along the way, even when it doesn't look like the kind of success that you thought it was going to be. And certainly when I was 10, I wasn't like, I'm gonna help a real estate agent write her book. But we've had such an amazing week, and I was so happy to be learning from her that I said, you know what, I'm gonna actually take today and celebrate this win. She had to go back to work, and I just took myself to a really nice lunch, got myself a glass of bubbly, and put my phone away and just sat and felt and had a little celebration. And celebrating, expressing gratitude releases dopamine and serotonin. I mean, we want this to be fun, right? We want this to feel good. And if you're always chasing the next thing, if you're like, yeah, I got a client, but they're not that great, or yeah, I'm designing, but it's not exactly what I want to be doing, pause and let yourself celebrate even what you might feel is a partial win. And that sense of progress will lead to more motivation. Like, oh my God, this is awesome. I'm being paid to design, and I can't wait until I get to choose my projects. And I'm going to keep working harder and harder because this feels so good. I can't wait to get that. That's going to feel great. Number 8, my favorite. If you can make it a road, it's a road. I recently came across a road someone made, which was stirring wooden balls in water. They have 300,000 followers of an ASMR account called Wood Soup. Look it up, I guess. I was like, I hope you're making great money. It's a road. What a great reminder. My favorite quote from Game of Thrones is, chaos isn't a pit. Chaos is a ladder. Some are given the chance to climb, but they refuse. They cling to the realm. And I can certainly be guilty of clinging to the realm. I'm like, I want that 1980s magazine world to still exist. And it doesn't. I know enough older writers to know things have changed so much. But there have been so many other ladders created. When I used to mail out my submissions, I literally, stamps were involved, other people. A man came to my house and took it. Now I can just send it over email, right? So many other ladders have been created. And I want to remind you that everything is made up. Your cubicles are made up, the 40-hour work week, the way we used to do things. You are allowed to make up whatever you want. As a writer, you're allowed to make up any words you want. Just want to remind you of that. You're allowed to make up whatever works for you. If it works for you to live in a tiny place or live out in the cabin in the woods and have a really cheap life and just do your art, you do that. That's great. If you want a fancy sushi dinner, you want to go places, you want to do things, so you want those really high-paying clients so you can buy that creative time in the morning and still do things, that's awesome too. Whatever works, works. And you might be flinging up a bunch of sand and dirt and being like, I don't think anyone's come this way before. I don't know if this is a road. But even if it's not, if it's working, if you're making progress, it is your own road. Number 9, make it a road trip. No one taught me how to make it a road trip like these people. They're my favorite. We have my personal hero here. Dave has his margarita can, which is strapped outside of his vehicle along with the gas can. This woman is amazing. Her license plate says fun hover, and she's got a banana costume. I mean, come on, it's no moon and stars like we saw, or the star in the rainbow, but costumes always amazing. There was a study on fun at work that said fun at work was positively related to both task and creative performance. So when you're having fun, in Seattle, we had the fish market. You've all heard of the people who throw the fish, right? There's actually a book about that, how they took this smelly, stinky job most people don't want and turned it into this phenomenon that makes incredible revenue, right? Just by adding fun. All they do is throw the fish and sing. It's free. That's a free innovation. And they also gave me this coin, this memento mori. So Wilson, who I rode with, made his into a keychain. And it's got a skull on it and an hourglass. And the back says, you could leave life right now. And it's just a reminder that we have no idea how long we have, how long our roads are. This novel I've been writing for years and years and years. I'm like, what if I die before I finish it? And I'm like, no, you know what? I've cracked myself up enough. I've had enough fun. I've grown. Like, I accept that. That is a possibility, right? So whenever I'm stressing, which is very often, I really try to remind myself to come back, have fun in the moment. When I was 17, my dad went to work. It was a Thursday. And my mom came to my school and told me my dad had died at work. And I went home, and there were his shoes, and there were his clothes, and poof. And it's such a painful lesson that I had to learn, but it has inspired so much of the there is no time for bullshit attitude that I have in my life. I am not gonna eat crappy food out of a vending machine at a job where I have to pretend to respect someone I don't respect. Unless I financially have to, which just happened. Which is why I work so hard, because I love working with people I actually can be real with and who I really like. I love making creative work. I love having adventures and not having to be like, am I allowed to go to Mexico? I didn't have to ask anybody, and that is a life I have spent 15 years building. Because one day, you guys are gonna be like, oh, Paulette Perhach died. Oh, I saw her talk one time. That's good. Number 10, just start the car. The ultimate rule I have for myself, because it can be a kind of a wuss out mood as well to be like, I'm just gonna read books on the thing, or I'm just gonna take classes on the thing. You get better at the thing by doing the thing. That is a major tenet that I have. Aristotle said, for the things we have to learn before we can do them, we learn them by doing them. So this wuss out move has been going on for a while. There's a quote about writing, that writing is like driving at night in a fog. You can only see as far as your headlights, but you can make the whole trip that way. And living your creative life is like this. You're gonna be able to see just as far as your headlights, and you're gonna be able to talk to your road pals, and you're gonna have your maps that are gonna get outdated pretty quickly. But you're just gonna make it in that way, trusting yourself to do your best in the moment and living your creative life as your most beautiful piece of art that you create. Thank you.